is 47. My wife slept beside me but loved another. So I let her go and slept alone in peace. This is my true story. I was a husband who gave my whole life to one woman. I thought loyalty was enough to hold her heart. Every night she slept beside me. But her love belonged to another. I felt her distance. I felt her silence. I felt her heart leave me, even while her body stayed. My story is about betrayal, heartbreak, and the peace that comes when you finally let go. Before I share everything, tell me where you are watching from, and please subscribe so that more people can hear the stories I have carried all my life. I was a man who never asked for much in life. I grew up poor, but I learned early that love and loyalty were more valuable than gold. When I met the woman who became my wife, I felt I had been given my greatest treasure. I promised myself that I would build a life around her, that every stone I placed and every meal I earned would be for her comfort. From the day we married, my devotion was simple and strong. I woke up early to work. I returned late, tired and covered in dust or sweat. But I never complained, because her smile was my reward. Every coin I earned was saved. Every dream I had was shared with her. I did not keep anything back for myself. My body ached many nights, but I thought only of her comfort. When the house was small and the roof leaked, I worked extra hours to repair it. When winter came and the cold bit through our walls, I chopped wood, even with sore hands, just to keep the fire warm for her. I skipped new clothes for myself so she could have hers. I chose heavy boots instead of comfort so she could have soft shoes. I walked when I could not afford transport so she could ride. Every act I did was out of love, and every sacrifice I made was without regret. I told myself that a husband's devotion was not measured by grand gestures, but by the small daily acts of care. And so I gave those acts every single day. I believed our nights together were sacred. She lay beside me, and I thought her heart rested in my chest as mine rested in hers. I thought loyalty was not something I had to question. When she closed her eyes, I thought she closed them in safety, knowing that the man beside her would protect her, feed her, and never let harm touch her. I believed trust was a quiet bond, one that did not need to be spoken about. My work, my presence, my hands calloused from labor, my heart tired but always open. These were the things I gave to her. I thought love was a circle, and if I gave it with my whole heart, it would return to me with equal strength. I never once imagined betrayal. I never thought that as she lay next to me, she could be dreaming of another. To me, the very idea was unthinkable, because my own loyalty was so complete. When you give your whole life to one person, you believe they are doing the same. You do not check their eyes for lies. You do not search their words for hidden meanings. You trust, because love feels like safety. I worked not only for today, but for the future we promised each other. I saved for the house, for the meals, for the furniture, for the quiet evenings when we would grow old together. I saved not money alone, but pieces of my body, my strength, my years, my health. I carried heavy loads, I bent my back, I ruined my knees, all because I thought it was worth it. I believed her comfort was my mission, her happiness my reward. And I told myself, if I can see her smile at the end of the day, then no pain I feel is wasted. Many nights when I returned home, she was already asleep. I would sit beside her, just listening to her breath. I thought to myself, this is peace. To have a roof above us, food in the kitchen, and my wife resting safely by my side. I did not need riches. I did not need applause. I only needed that quiet picture of family. And when I lay down beside her, I thought her heart beat for me, as mine did for her. My devotion was not only in work, it was also in forgiveness. If she was tired, I did not ask for much. If she was upset, I gave her space. If she wanted something, I tried to provide it, even if I had to cut back on myself. I believed that marriage was about giving more than you receive. And so I gave without question, without keeping score, without resentment. I gave because I loved, and love for me was service. Looking back now, I realize that I placed her above everything, above myself, above my own dreams, above my own rest. I thought that if a husband pours himself out like water, the wife will drink deeply and never thirst for more. But devotion alone does not guarantee loyalty in return. I did not know that at the time. At that time, I was blinded by love, and I thought love was enough. My whole life revolved around her presence. I worked so she could rest. I saved so she could spend. I planned so she could dream. And in all of this, I never once doubted her heart. To me, it was impossible that the woman who slept beside me could ever think of another. I did not see the cracks. I did not see the signs. I only saw my devotion, and I assumed devotion is always matched. But sometimes, love is one-sided. Sometimes, loyalty is given to someone who does not deserve it. But in those years, before the truth came out, I lived as though devotion was enough. Every night I returned home, I was proud that I had kept my promise, to protect, to provide, to remain faithful. I believed that in return, she carried the same promise in her heart. I believed our love was real. I believed our bond was unbreakable. I believed my devotion had built something eternal. I was wrong. At first, I did not see the signs. When you live inside love, you are blind to cracks on the wall. You think everything is safe because you want to believe it is safe. I thought her silence was only tiredness. I thought her excuses were only the weight of daily life. But slowly, I began to notice changes. They were not loud changes. They were quiet, almost invisible. But they grew heavier each day until I could not ignore them anymore. Her smile was the first thing I lost. I used to come home from work, open the door, and see her smile waiting for me. That smile was my medicine. No matter how much my back hurt or how heavy my heart felt from the day, her smile was enough to cure me. But over time, it faded. When I walked in, she barely looked up. Her eyes were on her phone, or her face was turned away. The warmth that used to greet me was gone, and I told myself it was nothing. People change, smiles get tired. But in my heart, I knew it was not the same. Then came the phone calls. At first, I thought she was only busy with friends or family, but the calls grew longer. She would step into another room, close the door, and stay there for an hour or more. I could hear her laughter through the wall, a kind of laughter that did not belong to me anymore. It was lighter, freer, filled with something she no longer gave me. When she spoke with me, her words were short, flat, almost heavy. But when she spoke with someone else, I could hear joy. I did not want to suspect anything bad. I told myself it was just friendship, just a harmless talk. But deep down, the ache began to grow. Her eyes told me even more than her voice. When she looked at me, I saw distance. Her gaze passed through me as if I was only part of the furniture, not the man she had once chosen. I remembered when her eyes used to shine with affection. She would watch me as if I was her whole world. But those eyes were gone. Now she looked at me with a kind of emptiness, as if she was waiting for me to finish speaking so she could go back to her thoughts. I saw it. I felt it. And yet I kept silent. Meals together became rare. She would say she was not hungry, or that she had already eaten. She stayed out longer. She said she was busy, but busy turned into absence. Even when she was home, her body was there, but her heart was far away. She sat beside me, but the silence between us grew so thick I could almost touch it. I tried to talk, but she gave me short answers. I tried to share stories, but she seemed distracted. It was as if my presence no longer mattered. I noticed the small things too. She cared less about what I said. She ignored my worries, brushed aside my advice. She used to ask me about everything, from little choices to big decisions. Now she made choices alone, without even telling me. I became a shadow in my own house, a background figure in her life. I did not shout. I did not confront. I told myself love required patience. I thought if I waited long enough, she would return to me. I thought silence could heal the distance, but silence only widened it. Her laughter, her warmth, her energy, all of it was given elsewhere, and I was left with the scraps of her attention, as if I was asking too much by wanting her love. Nights became longer. We lay in the same bed, but I felt miles away from her. I turned to her, but she turned away. I reached out, but her body was stiff, as if my touch was a burden, and yet I still hoped. I still told myself this was only a phase. I still clung to the belief that love could survive coldness. The cruelest part was not her distance. It was her indifference. Anger I could have faced. Arguments I could have fought. But indifference leaves you powerless. It is like watching someone walk away from you slowly, step by step, while you are chained to the ground. You cannot pull them back. You cannot shout loud enough. You can only watch them fade into another world, a world where you no longer exist. I saw her joy light up when her phone rang. I saw her disappointment when she had to put it down, and I knew those feelings were no longer tied to me. I knew I was no longer the man who made her laugh. I knew I was no longer the man who made her eyes shine. But still, I said nothing, because saying something meant facing the truth, and the truth was too painful to bear. So I carried my silence like a heavy stone. I told myself love was about endurance. I told myself maybe she was tired, maybe she was lost, maybe she just needed time. I told myself a husband's duty was to hold on, even when the rope cut his hands. I told myself patience would win her back. But each day that passed, the signs of distance grew stronger. Her smile grew weaker. Her heart grew colder. And the space between us became a wall I could not climb. That was how I lost her, not in one sudden moment, but in small, quiet steps. A fading smile, a hidden call, a distracted gaze, a body beside me, but a soul far away. Those were the signs of distance. Those were the wounds I endured in silence. And though I did not know it then, those signs were the shadows of betrayal already standing in my home. There is a moment in every broken love when the truth no longer hides. For me, that moment came slowly, like a shadow that stretched longer with each passing day, until finally it covered me completely. I had seen the signs, I had felt the silence, I had endured the distance. But one night, as I lay beside her, the truth entered my chest like a knife. She was there in my bed, her head on the pillow, her body close to mine. Yet I knew, without a doubt, that her heart was somewhere else. It was not imagination, it was not fear. It was truth, as sharp and cold as winter. I turned my head and looked at her face in the dim light. She was sleeping, but even in her sleep, I could see it. The softness that once belonged to me had faded. Her breath was calm, her expression peaceful, but it was not the peace of a woman in love with her husband. It was the peace of someone who had already given her heart away. My arms may have held her body, but another man held her soul. That realization crushed me in silence. I could not move. I could not breathe. I lay there, frozen, with tears that refused to fall, because even tears felt too heavy. I thought of every night we had spent together before, nights filled with laughter, warmth, and the comfort of knowing we belonged to each other. I thought of how many times I had held her close, believing she was safe in my embrace, believing I was her only home. But now I saw that while her body rested next to mine, her dreams were filled with another name, another face, another place where I did not exist. That betrayal was heavier than any argument, heavier than any lie, because it lived in silence. She did not confess it. She did not admit it. She simply carried it inside her, and I was left to drown in the truth without words. The bed, once our safe place, became a battlefield I could not win. Every time she turned away from me in her sleep, I felt another piece of me break. Every time her hand no longer reached for mine in the night, I felt the distance grow like a wall between us. I lay awake while she slept peacefully, and I realized I was alone, even with her body beside me. That is the cruelest truth a man can face, not the absence of a partner, but the presence of one who no longer loves you. Betrayal does not always come with loud arguments or open lies. Sometimes it comes with quiet breaths in the dark. Sometimes it comes with the weight of someone's heart beating for another while lying next to you. I wanted to shout. I wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth. But I could not. My voice was trapped in my chest. My pride was chained by love. My silence became my prison. I stayed still, listening to her peaceful sleep, while inside me, a storm of grief and rage tore me apart. I thought of all the years I had given her, the sweat on my hands, the strength of my back, the hours I spent working to build a home where she could feel safe. I remembered the days I went hungry so she could eat, the nights I stayed awake, worrying about her comfort while she rested. I had given her my youth, my strength, my loyalty. I had trusted her with every part of me. And yet, here I was, a man lying next to his wife, but no longer belonging to her heart. What greater cruelty can love deliver than to give everything and receive emptiness in return? The truth whispered to me again and again. She is here, but not for you. She is yours in body, but not in spirit. You have lost her, though she still wears your name. That whisper became louder than any sound in the night. I could not escape it. It followed me when I closed my eyes, when I opened them, when I tried to forget. Every time I looked at her, I saw betrayal carved into her silence. She did not need to speak it. I did not need proof on paper or words in the air. A husband knows when his wife's heart belongs to another, and I knew. There is a kind of heartbreak that does not break in pieces. It breaks all at once. That night was the night my heart collapsed. I felt as if the years of love we had built crumbled like dust in my hands. All the promises, all the dreams, all the memories, they meant nothing against the cruel truth of her betrayal. It was not just that she loved another. It was that she continued to lie beside me, pretending, while her soul was gone. To be abandoned is one thing. To be betrayed while being held is far worse. I turned my face to the ceiling and stared at the darkness. My body felt heavy, my chest tight, but my mind was clear. I knew I had reached the point where silence could no longer protect me. The truth had already destroyed me. Yet I stayed still, unable to act, because sometimes pain holds you like chains. I told myself maybe I was wrong, maybe it was my imagination, but in my heart, I knew, and knowing was enough to kill me quietly. That was the cruel truth I carried. The woman I devoted my life to no longer loved me. She belonged to another man, even as she lay in my arms. And the worst part was that I had to endure it without words, without explanation, without comfort. My heart broke in the silence of that night, and I knew I would never be the same again. There comes a point when silence stops being a prison and becomes a teacher. After many nights staring at the ceiling, after many mornings watching her eyes avoid mine, I knew the truth was no longer something I could hide from. Reflection had drained me, but reflection also gave me clarity. Love that is forced is not love at all. Trust that is broken can never be whole again. I realized that holding on to her would not heal me. It would only keep me chained to the lie. And so, in the quiet of my own mind, I made the decision that changed my life. I would let her go. It was not an easy decision. My heart still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would return to me fully. But my mind told me the truth. That hope was nothing but a cruel trick. She had already crossed the bridge to another man, and there was no path back. I had to choose peace over pain, dignity over humiliation, truth over lies. That choice came not in anger, but in surrender. I did not want to fight for what was already lost. I did not want to beg for scraps of a love that once was whole. I wanted to be free from the weight of betrayal. I decided I would not confront her with rage. Anger may have given me momentary satisfaction, but it would not give me peace. Screaming at her would not change her heart. Accusing her would not erase the nights she had given to another man. Rage burns quickly, but it leaves ashes behind, and I did not want my soul to be covered in ashes. I wanted my spirit to be light again. That is why I chose a quieter decision. No shouting, no violence, no revenge in the heat of the moment. Only the steady decision to walk away with dignity still intact. I told myself that a man is not measured by how loudly he reacts, but by how strongly he can stand in silence. My decision was not to win against her. It was not to punish her. It was not to prove myself right. My decision was simply to protect my own heart, because if I stayed, I would lose myself piece by piece. And if I left, I might lose her, but I would keep myself. That choice was painful, but it was the only one that would allow me to breathe again. The nights before my decision, I had been drowning in thoughts. After my decision, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, but it was no longer chaos. It became a steady ache, one that I could carry because I knew it had an end. Reflection had been the endless storm. Decision was the moment the storm began to break. I could see the first light of peace on the horizon, faint but real. I began to look at her differently, no longer as the woman who belonged to me, but as a woman who had already left me. Her presence in the house felt less heavy once I decided she would not stay forever. Her laughter that once cut into me now felt like an echo of something that would soon pass. Even her silence beside me at night felt less cruel because I knew it was only temporary. The decision gave me distance, and that distance gave me strength. I also decided that I would not live as a man chasing ghosts. Too many men waste their lives trying to bring back love that is already dead. I refused to be one of them. I would not beg. I would not kneel. I would not ask her to choose me again. Because real love is not begged for, it is given freely. If she had to be begged, then she was never truly mine to begin with. That realization gave me power, quiet but strong. Part of my decision was also to forgive, not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness did not mean I accepted what she had done. It did not mean I forgot the betrayal. Forgiveness simply meant I would not carry the poison any longer. Betrayal is like venom. If you keep it inside, it kills you slowly. My decision was to let the venom leave my heart. She could live with her choices, but I would not let her choices destroy me any further. The hardest part of my decision was accepting solitude. I knew once she was gone, the house would be empty. The bed would be cold. The mornings would be quiet. Loneliness scared me, but betrayal scared me more. I realized that sleeping alone in peace is better than sleeping beside someone who dreams of another. Loneliness can be healed with time. Betrayal cannot. That is why I chose loneliness. That is why I chose peace. I did not make the decision quickly. It came after many long days of carrying the truth in silence. But once I made it, I did not look back. My heart still hurt. But it was no longer confusion. It was no longer the endless question of why. Now it was the steady answer of enough. I had given her my devotion. I had given her my trust. I had given her my life. She chose to give it away to another. My part of the story was finished. Her betrayal had written the last chapter, and my decision was to close the book. In the end, the decision was simple, even if the journey was long. I decided I would not let her betrayal define me. I would not let her actions destroy me. I would not spend my remaining years in chains made of lies. I would release her, not because she deserved freedom, but because I deserved peace. That was my decision, and once I made it, my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Letting her go was the hardest step, but it was the only step left for me. After I made the decision in my heart, I knew I had to face the truth out loud. For many nights, I rehearsed the moment in silence. I thought of all the words I could say, all the pain I could pour out, all the questions I could ask. But when the morning came, I chose none of them. I did not want to shout. I did not want to accuse. I did not want to lower myself to anger. I wanted only to let her go with the same quiet dignity I had chosen for myself. That morning was like any other. The sun rose, the house was still, and the air felt heavy. She moved through the room with the same habits she had always had. But I could see it clearly now. She was here in body, but not in spirit. She belonged somewhere else. She belonged to someone else. And I could not hold on to what was no longer mine. So I gathered my strength, not the strength of anger, but the strength of acceptance. I spoke softly, my voice steady, even though my heart was breaking inside. I told her I knew, nothing more, nothing less. The moment the words left my lips, the silence in the room grew heavier. She froze, as if caught between denial and confession. But she did not speak. She did not argue. She did not even try to defend herself. Instead, her eyes fell to the floor, and in that silence, I received my answer. She did not need to admit it. She did not need to explain. The truth had already lived between us for too long. Her silence was my confirmation. I did not press her for reasons. I did not ask who he was. I did not ask how long. None of those details mattered anymore. I already knew enough. She had been beside me in body, but far away in spirit. Her dreams, her laughter, her secret moments had been given to another man. That was all I needed to know. Asking for more would only open wounds that could never heal. So I said nothing else. I turned away, choosing silence over arguments. Letting her go was not about punishing her. It was not about making her feel guilty. It was about freeing myself from the prison of betrayal. By speaking the truth calmly, I removed the weight from my chest. I showed her I knew, and by showing her, I showed myself that I had the courage to face it. My silence after that moment was not weakness. It was strength. Because silence can be louder than any scream. She stood there quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she gathered herself. I could see shame in the way she avoided my eyes, but I did not chase her with blame. I gave her nothing to fight against. There were no arguments, no angry words, no desperate pleas. Just quiet truth and quiet acceptance. In that stillness, she understood that I was releasing her. She understood that her time in my life was ending, not with violence, but with peace. The rest of that day passed like a shadow. She moved around the house, but the walls themselves seemed to know she did not belong there anymore. I felt the weight of years shared between us, all reduced to silence. Letting her go was like closing a door on decades of life. It was not easy. My heart broke again and again with every step she took. But I reminded myself that I was not letting go of love. I was letting go of betrayal, and betrayal is not worth holding on to. That night, she slept in the same bed, but it was no longer the same. I lay awake beside her, not with the pain of confusion, but with the calm of decision. I knew she would not stay much longer. I knew she could not. Her place beside me was already gone, and so I let her drift into her dreams while I drifted deeper into my resolve. I was letting her go, not with hands, not with force, but with my heart. In the days that followed, my silence spoke louder than words. I did not beg her to stay. I did not stop her when she slipped further away. I did not remind her of our memories, our promises, our life together. Because memories cannot change the present. Promises mean nothing if broken, and life together means nothing if love is gone. My silence was my goodbye, even before she walked away. Letting her go was also letting myself go, from anger, from fear, from humiliation. It was choosing not to let betrayal turn me bitter. It was choosing not to poison my spirit with hate. It was choosing to rise above what she had done. When she looked at me and saw no rage, no fight, no chains, I think it surprised her. She expected war, but I gave her peace. And that peace was stronger than any revenge I could have chosen. In the end, letting her go was the bravest thing I ever did. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was not filled with speeches or tears. It was quiet, steady, final. I simply let her know I was aware, and then I stepped back, leaving the rest in silence. That silence carried my dignity. That silence carried my strength. That silence carried the truth. She no longer had power over me. Letting her go hurt more than I can explain, but it also freed me more than I expected. She was no longer mine, and I no longer had to pretend. She could leave with her secrets, but I would remain with my peace. She could walk away carrying betrayal, but I would walk forward carrying dignity. And in the balance of those two paths, I knew I had chosen the better one. The day of separation came quietly, without storm, without noise, without anger. It was not the kind of ending one sees in movies or stories. There were no broken plates, no screaming voices, no slammed doors. Instead, there was silence. And in that silence, her decision and my decision stood side by side. She packed her things slowly, one piece at a time, as if removing herself not just from the house, but from my life, from my years, from my heart. I sat there in the same chair I had sat in for decades, watching the home change piece by piece, feeling as if walls were breathing differently, as if air itself had shifted. She was leaving, and with every item she took, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because betrayal was walking out the door. Heavier because years of my life were being carried away in boxes. The house had always been full of small details. Her dresses in the closet, her perfumes on the table, her books stacked near the bed. All those details made it feel like a home, not just a house. But as she removed them, space appeared where her presence once lived. The closet looked empty. The shelves looked bare. The table looked cold. It was as though the house was being stripped of its heartbeat. Yet at the same time, I told myself that betrayal had no right to remain here. A home built with my sweat and sacrifice could not continue to shelter deceit. So, even as the rooms felt hollow, they also felt clean. Neighbors noticed the change. Curtains shifted. Voices whispered. They saw her walking back and forth with boxes and bags. They did not ask, but I could feel their eyes, their curiosity, their judgment. In a small town, nothing stays hidden for long. They knew something was broken, but I did not confirm it. I did not explain. I chose silence, the same silence that had carried me through every step of this ending. Let them wonder. Let them imagine. My dignity did not need to be defended with words. My silence was enough. She did not cry as she left. Perhaps her tears had dried long ago. Perhaps her heart was already elsewhere. Perhaps leaving was not pain for her at all, but a relief. I do not know. All I know is that her steps were steady, her hands firm, her face without expression. She avoided my eyes, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of fear. And I gave her no battle, no obstacle, no reason to look back. When betrayal decides to leave, it is better not to chain it. Let it go freely. That was my thought. That was my strength. When the final door closed behind her, silence filled the entire house. It was not the silence of betrayal anymore. It was the silence of emptiness. For years, every corner of that house had been filled with her voice, her movement, her presence. And now, nothing. Just walls, just air, just me. I sat there and listened to that silence. At first, it was heavy, pressing against my chest, making the room feel too wide, too lonely. But then I realized, this was the silence of peace. No more lies whispered in shadows. No more secrets hidden behind fake smiles. No more nights of betrayal disguised as love. The house was empty, yes, but emptiness is better than poison. The bed that night was cold. The side where she once lay was untouched, smooth, waiting, but I knew it would remain that way. I slept alone, and though loneliness was sharp, it was honest. Honest loneliness is cleaner than false companionship. I did not have to wonder where her heart was, because I already knew it was not here. So I closed my eyes in solitude, but with dignity intact. The separation did not just take her body away, it also separated me from illusions. For years, I believed in love that was no longer there. I believed in a bond that had already broken. I held on to memories, hoping they would hold us together. But when she walked out, she carried those illusions with her. And what remained was truth, raw, painful, but real. I was alone, but I was free from lies. People often think revenge is about striking back, about making the other person feel the pain they gave you. But I learned that revenge can also be about standing tall, about not breaking, about not lowering yourself to anger. My revenge was my silence. My revenge was my dignity. My revenge was the fact that she left with her secrets while I stayed with my peace. She lost honesty. I kept it. She lost loyalty. I kept it. She lost her place beside me. I kept my strength within me. In that balance, I had already won. The house slowly began to adjust. Empty spaces became normal. Quiet rooms became part of life. At first, I missed her footsteps, her voice, even the sound of her moving in another room. But over time, I realized I did not miss her. I missed the woman I thought she was. I missed the image I had carried of her for years, the loyal partner I believed in, not the betrayer she had become. And missing an illusion is very different from missing a person. That realization gave me even more peace. The separation was not a single moment. It was a slow unfolding. Each day without her was another step away from pain. Each morning I woke up alone. I felt lighter. Each evening I sat in silence. I felt calmer. I was not rushing to heal. I was simply allowing myself to breathe again. Betrayal had stolen my breath for too long. Now, I was reclaiming it, one quiet day at a time. Some nights were hard. Some nights the loneliness felt like a weight pressing down on me. But I reminded myself, this loneliness was honest. It was not filled with hidden lies. It was not a bed shared with someone whose heart belonged elsewhere. It was a clean kind of loneliness, and with time, even that became easier to carry. The neighbors' whispers faded. People stopped asking questions. Life around me moved on, and I moved on too, not with noise, but with stillness. I walked through the empty house and realized that though she had taken her things, she could not take my dignity. She could not take my peace. She could not take the truth that I had faced her betrayal without breaking. That was mine, and it would always be mine. The separation taught me that endings are not always disasters. Some endings are beginnings. When betrayal walks out, peace walks in. When lies leave, truth enters. When false love disappears, space is made for self-respect. My house was empty, but my spirit was full. My bed was cold, but my heart was healing. My life was quieter, but my soul was stronger. I let her go, and in doing so, I let myself live again. The first night alone was the hardest. The bed felt too large, the silence too loud, the darkness too heavy. For years, there had always been another presence beside me. Even in betrayal, there had been warmth, movement, breathing. Now, there was only emptiness. I lay on one side of the bed, and the other side stayed untouched, cold and smooth. That empty space reminded me of everything I had lost, not only a wife, but also the idea of companionship. Betrayal had already broken me, but solitude made me face the cracks directly. My heart ached, and my body trembled. The house felt like a hollow shell, and every corner echoed with memories. Yet I told myself, better an empty bed than a bed of lies. The nights dragged on, slower than days. During the day, I could walk outside, see people, distract my mind with small tasks. But at night, there was no escape. The darkness reminded me of truth. It whispered the reality I had tried to avoid for years. She had been beside me in body, but her heart had been elsewhere. And now, even her body was gone. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself where love had gone, asking myself if I had wasted years, asking myself why betrayal feels colder than death. But there were no answers, only silence. And in that silence, I found the beginning of something new. Acceptance. Loneliness came like waves. Sometimes it hit with full force, drowning me in sorrow, making my chest heavy, making my breath short. Other times it was gentler, a soft reminder of absence, a hollow ache rather than a storm. But always, it was there. Loneliness sat with me at night, an invisible guest in my room. At first, I fought it. I told myself I should not feel so broken. I told myself to sleep, to forget. But then I realized that fighting loneliness only made it stronger. So I stopped fighting. I accepted it. I let loneliness sit beside me, let it share my nights, let it teach me. And slowly, I learned. I learned that solitude is not always punishment. Sometimes solitude is medicine. It strips away lies. It forces honesty. It makes you face yourself. In my solitude, I saw who I truly was. A man who had given love. A man who had been betrayed. a man who had survived. Betrayal had not destroyed me. Solitude showed me that. The nights of silence became mirrors. They showed me my pain, but they also showed me my strength. I remembered the years I had shared a bed with her, the laughter, the conversations, the simple act of turning and knowing she was there. But I also remembered the later years when she was with me physically, but gone in spirit. Those nights had been lonelier than this solitude, because lying beside someone who does not love you is the worst kind of loneliness. At least now, my loneliness was honest. At least now, I knew where I stood. The bed was empty, but so was the deceit. The room was quiet, but so was the betrayal. For the first time in years, I slept with truth. Nights stretched into weeks. Each night alone was still heavy, but slowly, the weight began to change. It was no longer a crushing weight. It was a weight I could carry. My body adjusted, my mind adjusted, my heart adjusted. I learned small rituals to ease the nights. I lit a small lamp by the bed, so the darkness would not feel so consuming. I kept a blanket folded at the edge, so the cold side of the bed would not sting so much. I even left the window slightly open, letting the cool air remind me that the world was still alive, still moving, even if my world had changed. There were moments when memories attacked me. A certain smell, a certain sound, even the way the moonlight touched the wall could remind me of her. I would feel the ache all over again, as if betrayal had just happened yesterday. But I learned not to run from those moments. I let the memories come. I let the pain flow through me. And then I let it go. Each night became a practice of release. Release of anger. Release of regret. Release of false hope. I began to see the difference between being alone and being lonely. Alone is a fact. Lonely is a feeling. At first I felt both. But slowly I realized I could be alone without being lonely. The house was quiet, yes, but I could fill it with my own peace. The bed was empty, yes, but I could fill it with my own rest. The nights were long, yes, but I could fill them with my own thoughts, my own healing. Solitude stopped being my enemy and became my teacher. There was a strange peace in knowing no one was lying beside me anymore. No one pretending, no one betraying, no one smiling with lips while loving another in heart. The silence was honest. The emptiness was truthful. And truth, no matter how painful, is always lighter than lies. Neighbors sometimes asked me if I was all right, if the nights were too hard. I simply nodded. They did not need to know. My battles were not for gossip. My healing was not for display. My solitude was private, sacred. The nights belonged to me alone, and in those nights, I rebuilt myself quietly. I discovered that revenge is not always fire. Sometimes it is stillness. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is to keep living, keep breathing, keep existing without breaking. She expected me to fall apart, to collapse under betrayal, but I did not. I lay in my bed, night after night, and I endured. That endurance itself was victory. That silence itself was revenge. Over time, the solitude grew softer. The bed no longer felt like a prison. It felt like my own space. The house no longer felt like a grave. It felt like my sanctuary. The nights no longer dragged endlessly. They became moments of reflection, of calm, of strength. I began to appreciate the quiet, the stillness, the freedom from lies. I began to see that solitude was not emptiness, but space. Space to heal, space to breathe, space to exist, honestly. Each night I survived alone made me stronger. Each morning I woke up with the sun proved that I had not been defeated. The loneliness did not kill me. The betrayal did not destroy me. The silence did not consume me. I lived, I kept living, and that became my quiet revenge, my quiet triumph. So the nights of solitude, though painful, became the path to my peace. They were heavy, but they carried me. They were long, but they shaped me. They were dark, but they led me to light. I slept alone, but I slept with dignity. I rested alone, but I rested with truth. And in the end, I realized that solitude was not my punishment. It was my freedom. The aftermath of betrayal was not fire, not chaos, not loud destruction. It was quiet. It was heavy. It was slow. The storm had passed, but the ground was wet, the air thick, the sky still gray. Life after betrayal felt like walking through ruins. Everything familiar was broken, but I was still standing among the pieces. My heart was scarred, my trust shattered, but my body kept moving. The days stretched long, and I faced them one by one. The first weeks were the hardest. Every corner of the house held a ghost. The chair at the table where she once sat, the sound of the clock that once ticked while she read, the mirror that once reflected two faces instead of one. All of them whispered memories. I could not escape them, so I stopped trying. I faced them. I looked at the empty chair and said nothing. I looked at the ticking clock and let it echo. I looked into the mirror and accepted that only one face remained. Facing the ghosts hurt, but it also freed me. Each time I looked, the pain lessened, as if the memories lost their power by being seen. Food tasted different in the aftermath. For years I had cooked with the thought of sharing. Even a simple meal carried the weight of companionship. Now, cooking was for survival only. At first, I ate little. The hunger was not in my stomach, but in my heart, and no food could fill that emptiness. But slowly, I forced myself. I boiled rice. I warmed soup. I tore bread. I ate in silence. The taste returned, little by little. My body needed fuel, and my body reminded me that living was still my duty. Eating alone became another form of strength. Every spoonful meant survival. The aftermath also changed the way I walked outside. People looked at me differently. Some pitied me. Some whispered. Some avoided me, as if betrayal was contagious. I felt their eyes, but I did not bow my head. Let them look. Let them whisper. They did not know my truth. They only saw the surface. They saw an old man left behind, but they did not see the endurance in my bones, the fire in my chest, the strength that silence had built in me. I kept walking. My steps were slower than before, but they were steady. Each step was a statement. I am still here. Sleep became both friend and enemy. Some nights I drifted quickly, exhausted from carrying the weight of betrayal. Other nights I lay awake, the past replaying in endless loops. In those nights I practiced breathing. Inhale, exhale. I told myself that every breath was proof of life. I told myself that survival is not always loud. It can be as quiet as breathing through pain. With time, the nights softened. Dreams still came, sometimes cruel, sometimes kind, but I learned to face them without breaking. Sleep became part of my healing. The aftermath also taught me about silence. Before betrayal, silence was emptiness. It was the gap between words, the pause in conversations, the background to companionship. After betrayal, silence became presence. It was the sound of my own heart, the rhythm of my own life, the space where I found myself again. I stopped fearing silence. I let it sit with me. I let it heal me. Silence became my shield, my blanket, my friend. I noticed small details in the aftermath that I had ignored before. The way sunlight entered the window at dawn, the way birds sang at dusk, the way rain tapped on the roof. These sounds and sights had always been there, but I had not seen them clearly. Now, in the absence of deceit, the world seemed sharper. The betrayal had stripped life bare, but in that bareness I saw beauty. Simple, honest beauty. A ray of light, a bird's call, a drop of rain. None of them betrayed me. None of them lied. I also learned about forgiveness. Not for her, but for myself. At first, I blamed myself. I asked why I had not seen the signs sooner. I asked why I had trusted so deeply. I asked why I had loved someone who could betray me. These questions ate me alive. But slowly, I realized that trust is not weakness. Love is not foolishness. To give your heart is not shameful. The shame belongs to the one who breaks it, not the one who offers it. I forgave myself. I stopped carrying guilt that was never mine. That forgiveness was the key to my freedom. The aftermath stretched into months, and in that time, I grew different, stronger, calmer, sharper. I no longer sought revenge and destruction. My revenge was my survival. My revenge was my peace. My revenge was showing that betrayal did not end me. She had taken my trust, but she had not taken my breath. She had taken my companionship, but she had not taken my soul. She had taken years of my life, but she could not take the years I still had. I was still here. That truth was my victory. I began to write my thoughts, simple words on paper, not for anyone else but for myself. Each page carried pain, but also release. The paper held what my heart could no longer carry. Writing became a ritual, a way to put order in the chaos, a way to speak when silence felt too heavy, a way to transform betrayal into meaning. My words were not perfect, but they were mine, and in those words, I found healing. The aftermath also showed me who truly cared. Some people reached out quietly, offering small gestures, a meal, a visit, a letter. Others stayed away. Betrayal has a way of revealing not only the one who betrayed you, but also those who stand by you after. I did not chase anyone. I let people show themselves. I learned that true care does not need noise. It shows itself in small, steady ways. The seasons changed. Winter passed into spring. Flowers bloomed again, as if reminding me that life renews itself, no matter how harsh the cold has been. I sat outside more often, letting the air wash over me. I felt the sun on my skin, the wind on my face. The world kept moving, and so did I. The aftermath was not the end. It was a beginning, a painful beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. I looked back less as time went on. The betrayal was still a scar, but scars are proof of healing, not just wounds. The pain did not vanish, but it became quieter, manageable, a background instead of a storm. The aftermath was not about forgetting. It was about learning to live with memory. The memory no longer controlled me. I carried it, but lightly. It no longer crushed me. In the aftermath, I discovered dignity. She had betrayed me, but she could not strip me of dignity. I chose how I carried myself. I chose how I faced the world. I chose not to bow, not to beg, not to collapse. My dignity was mine alone, untouchable. That realization was power. That realization was peace. The aftermath was not simple, not easy. It was long, heavy, exhausting. But it was also necessary. Without it, I would not have found myself again. Without it, I would not have rebuilt my strength. Without it, I would not have learned that betrayal does not end life. It only changes it. And sometimes, change is survival. Sometimes, change is freedom. So the aftermath became my quiet victory. A life of peace, a life of truth, a life of survival. I lost a companion, but I found myself. I lost trust in another, but I gained trust in myself. I lost years, but I gained wisdom. The aftermath taught me that betrayal breaks you only if you let it. I did not let it. I lived. I endured. I became more than I was before. The story did not end with her betrayal. The story continued with my survival. And that survival, silent and steady, was the greatest revenge of all. Now, as an old man, I sit quietly and tell my story. I do not speak with anger, nor do I speak with bitterness. I speak with the calm of someone who has seen the storms and walked through them. I speak with the peace of someone who has learned the deepest truths of life. Betrayal is not an event. It is a test. It is a question. It is a moment when you decide who you will be afterward. I learned that truth. I learned it through pain, through silence, through nights of loneliness. Looking back, I see clearly how much I gave. I see the years I worked, the sacrifices I made, the quiet love I offered. I see that love was never empty. It was not wasted. Even in betrayal, love leaves a mark. It leaves a teaching, a lesson, a way to live differently. My love for her was real. My dedication to my life, my family, my home was real. But love alone cannot force another heart to remain true. That is a truth I learned slowly, painfully, and forever. Betrayal taught me something deeper than pain. It taught me about choice. Every moment in life, we make choices. She chose to love another. I chose to let her go. She chose silence in the truth of her heart. I chose peace in the silence of mine. I learned that our choices define us far more than the events that happen to us. She could take my trust, my years, my companionship, but she could not take my choice to live with dignity. My choice became my freedom. That is the lesson I carry most clearly. I think about silence. I think about how much it taught me. Before betrayal, silence was emptiness. Now I know it can be strength. I chose silence after she left, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew words could no longer heal what was broken. Silence became my language of peace. It was the quiet answer to a loud wound. It was my way of saying that I would not chase, that I would not beg, that I would not lose myself again. Silence became my voice. Now, when I look at my life, I see that betrayal was not an end. It was a turning point. I lost something precious, but I gained something deeper: understanding. I learned that life will not always go the way you wish. People will not always be who you believe them to be. Trust can be broken. Love can change. But what remains in your heart depends on you. I chose to carry peace, not bitterness. I chose to live, not to linger in grief. That choice shaped the rest of my days. I have learned that peace is a journey, not a destination. After betrayal, the first steps are the hardest. The nights are the longest. The memories are the heaviest. But peace comes in moments. A breath in the morning, the warmth of the sun, the quiet of an evening, the smile of a friend. Peace is not the absence of pain. Peace is the presence of strength despite pain. That is what I found in my aftermath. That is what I live with today. Betrayal also taught me about forgiveness. Not forgiveness for her, but forgiveness for myself. For a long time, I carried anger like a stone in my chest. It weighed me down. I thought carrying that anger was justice. I was wrong. Anger keeps the wound open. Forgiveness closes it. I forgave her quietly, not with words, but with my silence, my letting go, my living without her bitterness. Forgiveness gave me back my own peace. Forgiveness became my gift to myself. Now I understand that betrayal is also a teacher of truth. It shows who we are, who the other is, and who we must become. She showed me her truth in her choice. I showed myself my truth in mine. I became an old man who could stand without shouting, who could walk without asking for explanation, who could smile without regret. That truth is not easy. It is hard, but it is free. Living with truth is freedom, and that freedom is my treasure. I want the people who hear my story to understand something important. Betrayal is not the end of life, no matter how deep the wound. Life continues. You continue. What matters is what you choose to do with the pain. Will you let it destroy you, or will you turn it into strength? I chose strength. I chose peace. I chose to walk away without hate. That choice changed me. That choice saved me. That choice gave me peace. I have lived long enough to know that life is measured not by the absence of pain, but by the presence of peace. I have known love and betrayal. I have known joy and loss. I have known silence and storms. And through it all, I have learned that peace is the greatest victory a person can find. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, but it is unshakable. Now, in the quiet of my later years, I sit and speak my truth so others may hear. I speak to those who have been betrayed, to those who have been hurt, to those who stand in silence with pain in their hearts. I tell them that they do not have to live in the shadow of betrayal, that they can walk into light again, that they can find peace. It does not matter how deep the wound is. What matters is the courage to choose peace afterward. I tell them this because I know the cost of carrying betrayal. It is not just the loss of trust. It is the loss of peace, of sleep, of joy. It is a slow surrender of life. But I also know the cost of letting go. It is not nothing. It takes strength. It takes courage. It takes acceptance. But it gives back what betrayal tries to take away: your dignity, your truth, your peace. I speak now not as someone who suffered alone, but as someone who lived through it and learned. Betrayal is part of life's tests. Not every heart remains pure. Not every promise is kept. But every heart has the power to choose what comes after. I chose peace. That is my teaching. That is my truth. That is my gift to anyone who hears my story. And so I live now with that choice. My bed is empty, but my heart is full. My nights are quiet, but my mind is at rest. My days are mine, without fear, without bitterness. I have carried betrayal, but I have carried peace too. And peace is stronger than any wound. Peace is the answer I have found. I do not say this to boast. I say this because I wish someone else to see what I have learned. That betrayal does not have to destroy you. That letting go does not mean losing yourself. That silence can speak louder than words. That forgiveness can heal without explanation. That peace is worth every battle. Now I tell this story not as a man filled with sorrow, but as a man who has found calm after storms. I tell it so others may see that the heart, though broken, can still be whole. That the soul, though wounded, can still be free. That the spirit, though tested, can still stand. My final thought, the one I want to leave you with, is simple. Betrayal is heavy, but peace is stronger. The world may take what it will, but the choice to live with peace belongs to you. Do not lose it. Hold it. Fight for it. Make it your own. And so I end my reflection, sitting quietly as I always have since that night of betrayal. My story is no longer filled with anger or regret. It is filled with truth. And that truth is my peace. He slept beside me, but loved another. I let her go, and I slept alone in peace. That is my final lesson. That is my life's truth. That is the gift I carry into my last days.